Hey, you guys, it's Myles Kovacs live again for live number 7. Wow, it's been 7 already, Hatham. And today we got a special guest, Josh Schulman. Josh, thank you for coming on the show today. Josh is an awesome coach slash speaker slash, you've done it all. You've coached people for Shark Tank. You've done all these amazing things worldwide. I was blown away. This guy actually teaches people in Korea and China and all these other countries how to present in English. How does that even happen? That's...
Well, we have to present somehow.
Do they call you in Chinese and you got to use a translation service? Or how does that happen?
No, actually, people reach out to me for a variety of reasons, why they're having challenges maybe presenting their products or their services. And everybody wants to kind of sell outside of our sphere of influence. Mm-hmm. If we only sell to our affinity group, mm-hmm. we'll be gone in 6-7 months. So for entrepreneurs, as you know, and for most people, whether they're in real estate or mortgage or in insurance or what have you, if they don't learn to sell to everybody, they're going to have challenges. And they've got to build on their English skill to be able to do that. So,
well, I'm American. Yeah, I'm American, and I have some English issues sometimes too.
Sure.
So, give me an example of maybe what's a classic example for people that have problems speaking.
Let's take idioms for example. Idioms are always some of the most...
I don't even know what is that? For the people that don't know like me, what's an idiom?
Idioms are those phrases. They're not metaphors, but they're those phrases that we use all the time in English that people don't know what I mean. So,
I failed English.
So you can imagine one of my realtors, when we were talking about a house that she was selling, I was talking about, well, you're going to love this house. It's going to blow you away. And she went, what? Right?
It's going to blow you away.
That expression is, but using idioms and help us kind of get more comfortable with other people. It helps us bond with other people. For instance, out of the frying pan and into the fire, right? Going from one difficult situation to another one, or out of sight, out of mind. We have all these things. We use them all the time in our speaking, and when English is a second language, we get caught into the perfunctory of yes and no and never really bond with another person, and that's the key. It's really a big part of it. But also getting more comfortable, things like our grammar, definite and indefinite articles and plurals and pronouns and prepositions and increasing vocabulary, like practical, useful vocabulary. And so I focus on all that with the element of presenting and speaking and pitching, and of course the dynamic of sales. Most people have not had formalized sales training, right? From the notion of prospecting all the way to close. And so all of those things kind of converge them together, so we can find a better way to make
sell.
A living.
Yeah, to sell, to make money.
We have a new world, right? Automation is taking over, and the new job is the one you create.
For sure. Opportunities, right? Opportunities are everywhere, but you got to be prepared. That comes back to training and speaking and all that stuff, presenting, right?
Right.
So the topic is kind of how do you overcome the fear of speaking and presenting? So as a coach that does speaking and also a speaking coach, what are the fundamentals? What is it that people could be you know what? I have a really hard problem just standing in front of the room and talking to my boss. I have a hard time talking and presenting my idea to the board of directors.
There was a great speaker, Les Brown, for many years. Very famous public speaker, motivational speaker. He would often talk about this notion of fear. And he would say, essentially it was an acronym, false evidence appearing real. Most of the things we worry about in the world that we are scared of aren't even real, right? So in fact, I think in the list of all the top fears that people have, spiders is up there, right? Death.
Spiders and death are kind of real, though.
Yeah,
those are
real. Well, not really.
Tell that to someone that's dying, man.
I was just watching Arachnophobia. I was flipping channels the other day. Remember that old movie about the spiders and stuff? And it still tripped me out. And then, of course, there was a spider in the bathroom, and I was all getting all out. And it's a silly little insect. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, until they bite you and kill you. That's the problem, right? Now, I'm not afraid of
There's
spiders.
Very small amount of them.
I'm not afraid of spiders. I'm afraid of getting bit by a poisonous spider. Right?
Right. But public speaking is the number one fear.
Okay.
So people have their stresses about that over death. Now, it's interesting. My sister's
over death.
Yes, and my sister's a therapist.
People are afraid of speaking more than they are of dying.
They are, absolutely, because the judgment and the fear of ridicule.
Because when you die, it's over, right? You don't care what people think.
Well, they're stressed that, listen, the body doesn't know what's going on, right? It's stressing out. When you have to go speak, your heart is racing 1,000,000 miles a minute, right? Yeah. You're sweating, you're palpitating, you got all these things going on, and the body is moving in strange ways. It thinks fight or flight.
Yeah.
It's on the run here. And so that's why it's a skill. I don't believe in this notion of a natural ability. People say, oh, public speakers, they're a natural. I think it's a skill set that we actually formulate a real understanding of what's going on. I work with a lot of engineers, and we focus on things like eye contact and gestures, like who am I looking at, and what do I do with my hands, right? And the idea of monotone, avoiding that, and having vocal variety. And
so vocal variety is just up and down.
Yes, having intonation, having cadence, having excitement. People get caught up. It's very interesting. So a lot of the fears are mostly ridiculous, and we can address each and every one of them. And
what is the most common fear?
So they're stressed that they're going to be found out. They're a fraud. They don't know what they're talking about. There's this idea right now that's very popular, fake it till you make it, act as if. People say this all the time. And the reality is they're not sure if they're ready yet. And they don't have all their ducks in a row. But you never know until you put yourself out there. You've got to do, right? And so many people, their first public speaking experience has never been trained or coordinated. They were just thrust into it. I think you were in a situation, you were put in front of 200 people at GM at one point.
Yeah, I think it was close to 500 people at General Motors sales convention, and they just basically said, dude, you're on.
And you were winging it.
I was winging it.
So I tell people, we want to avoid the winging.
Yeah.
You should know that when people speak in front of a group of people, and I tell people, if you're good at what you do, you will be asked to speak to a large group. I mean, that's just a fact. So people have to prepare themselves before.
Yeah.
And that idea is that they'll say, okay, where am I going to speak? This will help us immediately assuage or get rid of any of the fears. Okay, who am I speaking to? And why are they listening to me? Because there's only two reasons we ever do public speaking. One is someone asks you to speak, right? Or you ask to speak. And if you have to ask for the opportunity, or you get to rather, then you've got to prove, you've got some credibility to prove. So the stress level can be higher. When you're asked to speak, and that's where it's so stressful for people because they're not ready yet, they got to come up with it. Now, the problem is most people turn down those opportunities. I was active with Toastmasters for many years, and the average age, Myles, is 42 years old. That means people were basically coming out of school, toiling around for a few decades, then realizing, wow, I see retirement on the horizon. I'm not getting promoted. I'm having difficulty. What is it? Who is succeeding? And the people at the top levels of management do a lot of public speaking and presenting. And so many times when they had the opportunity, they turned it down.
Yep.
And so we have to go through the basics.
So that's like the failure to launch, right? So that's the number one. That's the number one killer for anything.
Absolutely.
It's just not even wanting to try to do it.
Absolutely. And we've been caught up as a society for so long, caught up on essentially two things. One, for a long time, IQ. Am I smart enough for this? Right? Well, just learning a bunch of stuff or memorizing things is nonsense. That's just an element. That's not true intelligence.
Oh, thank God.
Exactly.
Thank God.
EQ, which has become more important, right? That empathy, an emotional quotient, if you will. And we're seeing it with companies today that have more compassion for their consumers and their clients, their customers rather. But there's a third one, LQ. LQ means love quotient. Do you care about what you're doing? Are you passionate about it? I mean, when we're talking about this subject, and it's interesting you asked me whether we should do this, this is something I really care about because I want people to speak and I want them to present, not just for their livelihood, which I think more than ever is more important than ever today.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of automation, all these things.
Oh, yeah.
You got to go out there. We're like cavemen. Go out and find your product and service and bring it to market, and you got to tell people about it. And then there's the other thing called life. Life, that means to give a memorable toast. Right? To give a moving eulogy. Most people, when they give a eulogy, and I went through this, sadly, my father and my sister passed away within a month of each other,
Sorry
and then my uncle a few months later. Thank you, brother. And then a few months later, my other uncle. And this notion that I had to do all these eulogies within 1 year was so daunting. But I had some experience with it before in regards to preparing thoughts and doing activities in Toastmasters where you had to do a eulogy. But your average person is going through bereavement and stress about losing a loved one, let alone a really close loved one, and then they got to go give us a few words. And so that's emotional. A dear friend of mine passed away. He was just a lovely guy. I mean, he was just 36 years old, and he slipped into a diabetic coma.
Wow.
And he played in my weekly poker game. He was in my Toastmaster club. And I went to the funeral, and it was at a Baptist church. It was beautiful. It was like 500 people there, man. It was just unbelievable. And I was sitting in the back with my fellow friends from Toastmasters, and the minister, he mispronounced his name. And then he spoke for like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And it just didn't do him justice. And then he looked out to everybody, And he said, would anyone like to say a few words? And you could hear a pin drop, Myles. People were just staring at the ground, avoiding eye contact. And my Toastmaster friends looked at me, because I was president of our club at the time. They're like, Josh, go do it.
Go say some words.
I'm like, really? I'm going to go up there and just go give a random, not a random, but a eulogy with I didn't prepare any thoughts or any ideas. And I walked up there and I gave a proper 15-minute eulogy to this man I cared about deeply. And I loved it. And I thought it was so important. His daughter was there, his ex-wife, his mother. After, a woman came up to me and she said, you know what, that was very sweet and I really appreciated you did that. And I said, thank you. And she said, I wanted to. And I said, why didn't you? She said, I don't like public speaking. And those are one of those moments, and every time I ever tell that, it still gets like chills on me, because it frustrates me that in that moment where someone really should have and would have and could have spoke up for someone else, they didn't do it.
Yeah, and a lot of that, like, so I look at that as a lot of the, the fear and the anxiety that's created from like speaking. Yeah. So I look at it, it's like, when they're extra nervous or they're sitting there, what if people don't like me? What if I mess up, right? Those are the common questions, right? What if I'm fat? What if this light falls on us? What if the camera stops? What if I look fat from this angle?
And it's really not relevant.
The producer always has me hooked up, but he gives me the fat angle. So if I look fat today, it's not because I had extra burritos, right? I'm on the wide end of the fisheye right now, so.
But those things are relevant. And you know what, more importantly, they're not important.
Well, yeah, but they're important to people mentally.
But they shouldn't be in a moment like that when, let's say, some guy's retiring after 40 years or a gal, and they say, would anyone like to say a few words, and nobody says anything. And here's someone spent their entire career, and no one has some thoughts or feelings or stories or something to share because they're worried everyone's judging them. We have to get out of our minds. We're worried too much about judging. And I'm going to tell you something. These kids, a lot of the younger entrepreneurs, I work with a lot of millennials, and these folks are really stressing out, right? Contrast, compare, Facebook. They grew up in a world where they never lost touch. I'm 52 years old. A 30-year reunion is like nothing. We haven't seen these people in ages, and we're catching up, and we're like, dude, what's up? These days now with Facebook, if you grew up with it from kindergarten through elementary all your life,
it's all documented.
It's all documented. Yeah. And so that constant, like, oh my God, little Timmy, he's now married, he's got 2 kids, and they're comparing their lives, and they feel they don't measure up. And this measure up thing, we have to explore this. This is one of our biggest problems, and I think we're having tremendous issues with mental illness with that, and of course addiction, and it's very disconcerting.
No, mental illness is, it's real.
Of course.
And me, I'm a big proponent of that. I speak about it a lot. Sure. But going back to like, from my experience, like my first time speaking, I'm at GM, 500 people in the crowd, and I'm like, what am I here to do? So I just basically told my story, and talked about like trends and kind of like what I foresaw and what I felt I was an expert at or what I understood.
Yeah.
And
I start my programs all the time with, let's talk about our story.
Yes.
Who we are, where we come from, and where we can really get into it is think about our parents and our grandparents and the sacrifices they made for us. Because when we can get to that connected level, and a lot of my programs, we immediately, the speeches, they have to talk about something they really know and love and care about.
Yeah.
And everybody cares and loves, for the most part, about their family.
Yeah.
And appreciate where they're coming from. But to actually articulate it, to go through this process, what is my story? Who am I? I have a unique background, as you may know. My mother was a Holocaust survivor, and she was hidden in a Catholic orphanage during the war. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. It was an extraordinary, extraordinary story. And I tell that story. I have 9 slides. I put them in every single presentation that I do because it's so powerful. It's my little own FU to Hitler.
Yeah.
But if I have a speaking platform and opportunity, not only do I
not
want
in Germany, but
yeah, but no, but
I'm just
there are a lot of people that I present to within the Chinese community, Korean or what have you, that perhaps they don't know the story as detailed about the Holocaust.
No,
and this is an important opportunity for me to share that, and they need to see my opportunity, what my story is, because otherwise they're going to make some impression. They go, oh, who's this white middle-aged straight guy going to share with me about adversity and challenge? Until they hear that.
Yeah.
Let alone my cancer, being a cancer survivor, and all the other things that
congratulations
I've
on
gone through
that.
my life.
Yeah, congratulations.
And all of those things affect your perspective. And I don't want to be cancer boy, so I haven't talked as much about that at different sequences. But I've been asked by the Lymphoma Society and different things to speak. And there are times that I do want to motivate or help other people who are stressing about that adversity, which is so hard. Because I had a different approach to it. I have this, what's that old line? If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, you don't mind.
Yes.
I would do my chemotherapy on Friday so I could be back to work on Monday. I had this mindset that I'm not going to let it overcome me. And my girlfriend was amazing. She shaved my head that first day.
Yeah.
You know, we're not letting cancer take my hair, and just approach it from a new thing. So adversity, challenge, I think we should really embrace it.
Absolutely.
No matter what the circumstances, especially speaking. If you get an opportunity to speak, we should embrace it and then learn all the other elements of what we could do and systemically break down what are the components of the story that I'm going to tell. There's an old thing called the Navy way, right? In construction and organization of a speech. Have a beginning, have a middle, and have an end. Tell them what you're going to talk about, tell them what you told them. And that doesn't mean you can't be like Quentin Tarantino and switch it up a little bit and take the end and put it in the middle and have fun and grab them, because hooks are really, really an interesting way to tell a story.
No, for sure. I mean, I tell people too, it's like, take it to the basics. You know, you got all these big companies that are just massive worldwide conglomerates.
Sure.
They all started in somebody's basement, bedroom.
Absolutely, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So your first speech, you should suck. You know, I mean, that's what I tell people. Like, really, you should suck. And then you should suck less the next time. And
but you don't have to. And the problem is with video now, when you start to suck on your first one, people are constantly comparing it.
No, I agree. But I think part of it is just allowing yourself to just be who you are and try to do the best job you can.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. Because if people knew that they could do that, then they're going to kind of put down their guard a little bit more.
They do. People want you to succeed.
And how many people are actually listening when we talk? Like, you know what I mean? Like, somebody told me that. Somebody told me that no one's actually listening to you talk. And I was like, you know what? Fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, everybody listens to me, damn it. You know? But he's right, because he was like, you'll see people listen and take nuggets, and then you lose them mentally for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking about what I said, or they're thinking about something else. And then they'll come back, and then this person goes.
Well, you know what they say? It's very interesting. 90%, when you go speak at an event, 90% of the people are there for the topic. Okay, that sexy title.
So if you stick to the topic,
they're there to hear what you're there to talk about. Unless the 10% is you're some celebrity or famous person, or they've heard of you, and a lot of people know who you are, and you've spoken at events.
Yes.
They may come for that reason alone. But get this: once you open your mouth and you start speaking, it flips. And now 90% of what it is your dynamism and your energy, and 10% is your topic. They don't care what you said.
That's correct.
So because you've had this experience where they don't really care what you're saying, they love that you are so passionate.
Yes.
And you're so authentic, and you care about what you're talking about, that they'll follow you to the end of the earth and hear what you have to say. That's why it's such an onerous and such an extraordinary responsibility for our politicians now when they speak and they get this thing called the microphone, to be responsible about what they say.
Well, I don't know about that. You know,
no, but they should.
Well,
I'm saying they should.
Everybody should be responsible, but you know.
Well, they don't. But now everybody has a microphone, right? I mean, YouTube is flooded with people who want to share their ideas. I'm going to tell you something. I have a number of YouTubers as clients. They have 4 million followers, but they can't get up in front of 40 people. And the challenge is that a lot of the work that is done on YouTube, right? They'll have maybe teleprompters. They'll have they jump cut, edit it, right? They practice and rehearse it many times. And that's not real life. So when they have to go then speak to a large group and people want to hear, how did you get started? How did you build your channel growth? They're not going to ask you about the Chinese tariff situation. And they get so overwhelmed about all these what ifs, which don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten asked questions, and I would tell them, you know what? I don't know. I'm not an expert on that.
It's the best answer.
I'm not the expert on that. Let me get back to you. Is there anybody in the audience that knows? You know, can you answer this question?
And that's what I like is when things work, and when you do them systemically over time, and you period, you go, okay, that works, and then you can teach it. Everybody could teach something, and when you teach it, you edify what you know.
What about kind of breaking the ice, like a joke or some kind of comment or something? Like, is that something you advise? Because I do that because I'm a nervous wreck. And I do that, kind of break the ice and maybe, you know, make everybody kind of feel comfortable.
Well, we do it in different ways. We have what's called hooks, where we have a way of grabbing people's attention in the beginning of a speech. And there are 3 types of hooks that you might want to use. You might want to give a quote, a short quote that is really kind of engaging. And it's nice because it really says, look, someone smarter and wiser than me has got some insight on this. The second thing is, which is interesting, is a statistic. But it's got to be a true statistic, not some people say, or you know what they say, all that kind of nonsense, but a real interesting stat. So, and then a third one would be a word. You take the etymology of a simple word and you break it down. That gets people's minds going. They get excited and engaged
like
with that.
Like genius, right? Or something like that.
And go in what that where the breakdown of the word means on that. And that has a lot of impact, and that gets you started. Because what a lot of people don't remember, once people start to go speak, they got to get that engine running. They got to get the voice settled, right? The body has to realize it's not under threat. And then they can fall in what they have to say. Most people stress out because they think, I'm going to forget what I'm going to talk about. If they forget what they're going to talk about, then they stress. That's why I'm not a big fan of note cards. In my classes when I teach, I take notes on different things, on my students, on feedback, to give them feedback, but I don't use notes. I should know what it is that I'm talking about. These kinds of things that we're talking about now, it shouldn't have to be combing through a lot of notes to find out what that is.
Yeah.
So those things help a lot of people to get started. Another thing you mentioned about humor, not jokes. When people look up jokes, Google what's a funny joke?
Not a joke.
No,
it's
but
more
people,
like a joke about myself or like.
No, but many people do this. Keynotes all the time. When people come in bringing me their keynotes, I'm like, "Where'd you get this joke?" He said, "Well, I just looked it up." It has no reference or relevance to what you're talking about.
Or relevance to that person, right?
Humor is not just make me laugh. It's absurdity. It's silliness. It can make you smile. It can be sweet. It can be gentle, and it has that dynamic. But people need to relate.
So no jokes, humor. Right?
Humor. Open it up in a broader spectrum of what it means just to simply smile.
Yeah.
You can see a very funny movie in the movie theater and everybody's laughing, hysterical. But when you watch the movie at home by yourself, you smile.
Yeah.
You don't chuckle.
I don't know. I laugh hysterically.
Well, you might.
I'm one of those guys. I'm on the plane. I'm like laughing, and everybody's like, "How's this guy watching?"
No, it'll definitely. It could have that effect, but for the most part, people want to appreciate something that they can relate to.
So relatability.
Relatability is very key.
So I think the average person could relate to everyone when they're speaking to them. So that should be kind of the number one thing to
everybody
lead
has
with.
a story, right?
Yes.
Look at comedians. Now it's wonderful. Those are ultimate public speakers, right? And I did this all the time. I was a comic for a little while, and I have to tell you something. A comedian has to make them laugh every 3 lines. A speaker just has to make them think every 3 lines, but you want to make them laugh 2 or 3 times in the totality of your speech, or you're going to lose them in
to give them that excitement and take them on that full emotional roller coaster, right?
Right, and they want organic
happiness,
humor, not the one where you're
sadness,
waiting for the laugh kind of thing, but just something that makes you laugh and feel good about it. And that's the stress that people have.
So somebody told me one time, like, envision like your mom sitting in the audience and you're talking to your mom, Then somebody else said, hey, you like dogs, right? I'm like, yeah, I love dogs. They're like, envision your dog over there. And I was like, I'll be like, oh, come here. Are you hungry? You know what I mean? Like my whole tone changes when I'm talking to my dogs.
These are tricks. These are little Band-Aids. And what I tell people is like, listen, let's focus on the real elements of what the things are. People used to say back in the 50s and stuff, just look over people's heads. Don't actually get eye contact. And the reality is you need eye contact. You have to connect with them. But how long you look? You should look 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you turn, you're looking at someone else, and you're spreading throughout the entire audience, and you're actually connecting. When people are looking over people's heads, they're not.
There's a disconnect.
Yeah, they're disconnect, and they're fine that they're losing the F. Now, granted, sometimes you'll speak, and I've spoken in large events, and you have too, where the audience is completely darkened out. You can't see them. You have these hot lights that are on you.
You can't. That's how the first event was.
Right.
I felt like I was a rotisserie chicken at King Taco.
But you could see the first few rows.
Yeah.
You could see the first few
rows.
rows.
I couldn't even see the first few rows. I was so far back that it was just dark, and all I had was these lights on me. I felt like,
So then you're in the zone. So I suggest to a lot of people what can help them is to visualize. Really anticipate. In sports, we do that. Like in tennis or golf, you visualize the trajectory. We do this with the words, with the voice.
So you're visualizing your voices hitting these people?
Yeah, I'm hitting how far back, and and it's different. Some people, listen, we talk about the unknown, but talk about voice. People hand you a microphone. You've been practicing this speech, right? You got your clicker in one hand for your PowerPoint, and now suddenly you have this microphone. You're like, what am I supposed to do with those fancy gestures I've been practicing? So people should ask questions. I tell them all the time, be an investigator. What, when, where, who, why, how am I speaking? Am I wearing a lapel mic? Am I wearing a lavalier?
So you got to ask yourself these questions.
No, you ask the people to promote who putting on the event.
Put it on the show.
You say you go. Also, this is a big one: is go to the event, the place before. Mm-hmm. I had to speak up in San Francisco at the Marriott.
Yeah. And
so I was a little stressed about it. It was a month away, and I was really nervous. I was finding it was difficulty sleeping. It was a big audience. So I went down to LA and to the downtown at the Marriott, and I said, "Listen, Ballroom B, the one you have in San Francisco, is that a similar layout?" And she said, I'll show you. And it's almost identical, she said. So I went in there. They were setting up for bar mitzvah or something. I go in, and I said to all the busboys and everybody, I said, you guys want to be entertained? I practiced my speech up on that, which was the same layout. It was going to be the same kind of format. And that really helped me feel confident when I got there.
So preparation and practice.
Everything is preparation. So every little dynamic. Am I going to be holding a microphone? You can often request, can I prefer a lavalier or something that's on my jacket or something?
Which is a wireless microphone for the people that don't know.
A wireless microphone.
Lavalier is,
right.
Sounds very sophisticated.
Or a lapel mic. Yeah. They have different kinds. And then take the moment to take your jacket off, whatever, and drape the wiring.
I thought we were raping the wiring.
Draping the wiring behind so that you're actually not having like wires hanging all over.
Yeah.
But that's very important. So you go early enough, you can be able to prep and you can see all that. Also, I encourage people to go early enough to talk to people, to say hello, to engage, because all those people will come sit in the front row.
What about recording themselves and then also playback and, like practicing the mirror? Like what do you recommend?
Not the mirror and not a wall. No, in fact, I'm very excited about what we're going to be doing this year. We're rolling out with some virtual reality, teaching public speaking and presentation skills, sales training, even business English, and poker. I teach poker as well, using virtual reality. We take your photograph, we envelop it on an avatar, and it's got these humanoid characteristics, like scratching your head or raising your hand, crossing your arms in disbelief. And based on intonation and cadence of the speaker, we can gamify it. So if you say like, or distracting gestures, you lose point value. So the idea of practicing against a wall, it's not helpful because you're not getting feedback. So in this case, you can be actually talking to a really a live audience, or even if it's recorded. Our initial stuff we're working on now has just audiences that are recorded.
Sort of a speaking video game.
Yeah, but you're looking at a mirror. You're just seeing yourself in reflection, and it's too confusing.
So how do you stop somebody that says, whatever, bro? We call
those filler words.
Okay.
And ums, uhs, likes, and you knows, and there's a whole host of them. Sometimes people say so, whatever they might be. You want to find a way. What I tell people is get a mason jar. Get a mason jar, get a roll of quarters, and tell your family, if I ever say like, or so, or any of these different things, or put a quarter in the jar. Okay. Guess what? Before you know it, you're going to go out, you take the family for ice cream, you may buy a new car. I don't know.
It's like the cuss can, right?
It's just, it is, and it will start to eliminate. So listen, there's been some terrific speakers who are plagued with ums and uhs. Obama was a fantastic speaker, of course, but he said a lot. And what happens is when we're speaking and we have these ums and uhs and all that, the listener is going through this little minefield and having to be able to navigate what you're saying, and they're looking for the substance. The same with young kids or even young millennials who often use what we call uptalk, where they're asking questions and everything kind of is going up like this and an upward lilt. It's not like they're Irish or something like that. That's a lot different than that. No, they're always going up, and it's almost like they're asking for approval or a question. And so we need to have a declarative statement.
So they're looking for consensual validation every time they say something, right?
So you need conviction in your statement. And this is what I mean.
We'll blame that on the moms.
No, it's not. No, but it's the way everyone else
How
speaks.
does the family dynamic and the way they communicate and stuff determine who you are as a speaker?
It can. If you grew up in a family that everybody was talking. I grew up with 4 sisters, and I was the only boy. So if I want to get some word in edgewise, I had to pop in there and be able to really put myself
Project
out there.
yourself.
In fact, I was the only boy in 9 grandkids, so that was kind of fun from that context. So you definitely do that. But I mentioned earlier briefly, just my sister is a therapist, and she and I talk about this frequently because some folks do have some sincere, significant issues that is keeping them from being able to communicate, let alone public speaking. And so those are important that they address. I'm not a therapist, so I focus it as a speech coach. Because if we could deal with the practical, useful stuff, then I can get in there and generally get rid of those issues. But if mom and dad were telling you all the time, be quiet, I don't want to hear from you, that's going to affect your confidence.
Absolutely.
If I were to take one word that I can streamline through every single client, every single person that has ever told me or stressed with me their concerns about public speaking, is confidence. How can I get more confidence? And that's going to come from practice, but not just doing it, but practicing it the right way
and preparing.
Doing it. And preparation is key. Not over preparing. If we over prepare too much, then we're going to be rote. During the debates a few years ago, Marco Rubio, who's a skilled speaker, memorized a lot of talking points. That's what a lot of politicians do, is they memorize a lot of talking points, and what happens is they forget they said them. And so in his case, he said the same phrasing 3 or 4 times, and even Trump commented about it, and he gave him a hard time.
I'm sure Trump did.
No, but which is another element of speaking.
Yeah.
But that dynamic, though, sometimes it's important to connect to an audience too, right? And so that was a big challenge for him, and that's what really hindered him. And there was another circumstance where he had to give a response to the State of the Union speech, and in the middle of speaking and addressing the United States of America, while he's giving the response, he dumped out of water and grabbed water and started drinking water, and then got back in, and it was seen all over. And so that is a very big element, actually. We call it simple hydration, drinking water. This is an instrument. This is you have to fuel it, and the water is what's going to do that and avoid those errors.
Yeah. So you're saying don't grab a water while you're speaking.
No, we're doing drink water before you go and speak and present.
But
not
sometimes,
too much.
I know, but when you get nervous, sometimes it's like you got. like cottonmouth.
Well,
right?
no, but that's what I'm saying. Drink water, like a half a bottle of water before you go on. You're not going to have to go to the restroom right away.
I had to. I was speaking at SA World Congress.
Yeah.
And I was mic'd up, and I said, I got to go pee.
Right.
And everybody
well,
heard.
You know what? When we're nervous, all kinds of things affect us. Our heart palpitates, and we do. The body starts to shut down in a certain way, and it doesn't know how perhaps to deal with it.
There's two things that I do before I speak. I pee and I pray, right? Those are my two things that I do every time before I'm going to speak. And it's just habitual. So usually right before I go on, I have to go to the restroom, like just habitually.
Right.
And then the producers are like, where's this dude at? They're all worried.
So you can anticipate that, Myles. You can make sure you go beforehand, and,
It's habitual, right? So I'm one of those OCD guys. So once I develop kind of my way of doing something,
right,
I have to go do that. So it's
but then we talk about this because I teach a time and goal management module. People are always intrigued because I have 45 clients and group classes a week. It gets really crazy.
That's awesome.
And there's a format that I do and that I maintain, and health is a main part of it. I call it HENS, which is it's a little thing I created with like hydration, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And meditation, I call it HENS Plus.
I sleep and meditate. So everything else, I'm not.
No, but they're different. Like
I drink a lot of water.
Sleeping is regenerating the body, and you definitely do it.
Absolutely.
But meditation, I'm not a real big Zen guy, but this notion of 5 minutes a day of actually unplugging and being able to actually process what's going on with the body, how you feel about different things. Yeah. And since my cancer experience, I'm very self-aware physically what's going on, so that people can be more attuned. And that's a challenge for a lot of men, because a lot of men don't know they have problems until it's too late sometimes.
Well, I think we're all in denial. You know what I'm saying? So, it's like I'm so tough. I'm in denial.
Right.
I don't want to go to the doctor.
Right. Well, they should. They should go physically once a year. They should do a lot of different things. They should go to the eye doctor once a year. They should go to the dentist twice a year. They should be going to the dermatologist once a year. I had a bout with that where they took part of my shoulder from a melanoma thing. So people have to be more aware when they're outside about suntan lotion and all those things. And
awareness.
But
do you think, like, if somebody's going to go and pitch, say, that to their boss or something like that tomorrow, what's some practical knowledge that you could give them right now to where it's like, here are some of the things that I recommend you do to help yourself through this process? Is there anything like that?
Okay, so let's say, well, here's the thing. We got to go back to what we were talking about. Did the boss say, listen, I want you to come to present tomorrow on such and such, on this new initiative that we have? Right? Well, then they have to go back in themselves and do their homework and say, okay, what's the expectation? What does he want? And then how can I wow him? What am I going to bring to the table that he hasn't heard or seen before? What does he not expect? It's not about shock for shock value. It's to differentiate ourselves.
But so does that mean like new information, or is it the way
Absolutely.
you present it?
It could be.
What if it's the same information?
I tell people all the time, there's an old thing, what's an acronym? SMART goals, right? It's specific, measurable, attainable, reliable, and timely. So you want to write out basically like a thesis sentence on anything you have to do. Yeah. All right, I got to go give a presentation next week. I'm going to write out, all right, what is it specifically I'm going to do? Yeah. Measurable, what's the point of it? Are we trying, is it for revenue, or what is the format?
What's the goal?
What's the goal? Is it attainable? Can I do it? Because that's the first question your boss is going to ask you. How do we get started on it? Is it reliable? What is the tools we're using? What is the software we're using? Who are the people involved in making those decisions? And then is it timely when we do it? So many people approach me with stresses about public speaking. They want to do a seminar. I said, okay, good. Let's look at the schedule. July 24th. How's that day? Yeah, what about? I said, that's your speaking date. Now you have a target. And then we format all the things beforehand. And we literally, I do this thing called UTH in my programs, called
what is
Under
that?
the Hood.
Oh.
Which means we look under every single element. And you love this. I'm a car guy too, and I can appreciate that you should know everything and anything that's going on. And today, listen, let's take cars. People don't know about cars. Most car people don't know about cars anymore.
I own a car magazine. I don't know shit about cars anymore.
Right?
I haven't worked on a car in so long.
They're so complex. They're computerized, all this stuff. But when it comes to public speaking, what we're talking about, that we can and should know.
Well, yeah, and then also if it's your job, you should be informed and you should know, right?
You could. I mean, definitely, and it's an opportunity. So people deal with butterflies, right? We've all heard that butterfly. I get all these butterflies flying around. So here's a different way to look at it. So instead of these butterflies just meandering around, just flying all over, let's, is a fun word I like, anthropomorphize them. That means to make them human. These little butterflies, we're going to put these little leather neck helmets on with goggles, right? And we're going to strap them in. They're going to be really geared up. And you're going to put them in jets, these like Blue Angel jets. So instead of these butterflies flying around, look, they're going to go, phew, 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 phew. And you're like, you have an attitude, like a focus on it. And it's different. And so when you know you're going with purpose, you crush it. You crush it.
And so what is purpose? Like, for example, going back to that person
Sure.
that's going to go and pitch to their boss and stuff like that, their purpose is to wow them, right?
Well, they're trying to get the idea across. If he's saying we need to cut X amount of dollars on this or whatever the thing, you're going to go in there, but storytelling is so powerful because people can relate to it. And so you can start in a unique way. But what's really an opportunity for the employee is promotion. Because if that boss, and look, it's the same with hiring. I work with a lot of folks in the interviewing process. And I tell them, listen, they are not hiring you for your 30 years experience. They're hiring you, can you hit the ground running? They're looking for potential. Like, I even talk about that notion of like tilt, that idea. Are they leaning forward? Are they really kind of excited, right? When someone's in an interview and they're sitting back like this, like they could care less, right? That affects them. So bosses are looking about, where's the potential in my crew? It goes back to that Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? If you have 100 employees, 20%, 20 people of the 100 are hustling and working and doing most of the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to a friend just recently, and they made it to the final interview.
Yeah.
And then they didn't get the job. And then they told them that because they didn't smile during the interview process. I mean, it's things that are that simple.
Sometimes it is. But because it shows friendliness. People want to work with people who are friendly.
Yeah, but to some people, smiling is not, something that they do. Yeah. So they're just kind of more serious and things like that.
Yeah.
So he didn't get the job because he didn't smile.
Well, it's good that he got that information, and now he can explore with it. Listen,
he's smiling every day now.
Well, when you know your livelihood depends on it, but
he's still not smiling. That's the sad thing about it.
We can tell when people are giving a BS smile, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's so that's part of that.
Yeah, that nervous smile, like that I'm hiding my teeth kind of smile.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I think people are afraid, like when they smile, they're showing vulnerability. Or they're showing, like you were saying, that people won't take them seriously.
Yeah.
So I deal with a lot of people who they put these hats on. I'm an introvert. I don't have to be the life of the party. I just sit there and wait for people to come talk to me. Or at work, I'm not a sales guy. I'm an engineer, and I want to be a sales engineer, and those guys make so much more money. But that's not me. We pre-programmed this title of who we are and what we do, and that's the problem. The extrovert. People think, I'm the life of the party. You don't have to always be that too. You have to find that
balance.
That
balance, yeah.
That balance. But people need to know, if you're an introvert and you want to be promoted, or you have a great idea for a product or service and you want to bring it to market, you better get out there because you got to pitch, present, and persuade.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people. It's like, when you're out there and you're going to pitch your boss and stuff like that, be yourself and talk about things that you know about, and the things you don't know about, don't try to talk about them. It's that simple. Get people involved, prepare, get all the information prior to, ask a lot of questions,
Right. And so people on the spot often are asked to speak on things they're not as familiar with.
Yeah.
And so like you were saying, it helps to be honest and be straightforward and say, you know what, I'm not as familiar with that, but let me get back to you. I tell people in sales all the time, I don't know the answer to that. But there's dynamics of all that I think they should keep in mind.
But do you think that's a weakness, right? So if you're there to present or something like that and you don't know, is that a weakness or perceived weakness, or?
Well, you would know you don't know before you went to go speak.
That's correct.
You can go and kind of look up and see it and anticipate. So I tell people.
So you guys got to know what you don't know, right? You guys got to figure that out before you get there.
Thing. You don't know what you don't know. Okay, here's the thing. Most people, when they're speaking at an event, they know if they crushed it or they knew they sucked. And the fact of the matter is, and that's why body language and reading people is so essential to, if you have that opportunity to understand where you're going at. But you have an idea. You can tell if they're laughing or if they're enjoying themselves or they're clapping or they're hoo-hooing or whatever it is. And so people need to be really in tune with what it is they're saying, how they're saying it, and not memorize a lot of stuff. People are memorizing portions and parts of speeches. You want to memorize not how you're going to say things, but what you're going to say.
Yeah.
So that comes to what we call extemporaneous speaking, which is very important. Extemporaneous speaking is speaking off the cuff with no notes, which for the most part is what really impresses people, when you can be able to speak really clearly.
On the dime.
On the dime, without ums and uhs and likes in your nose, and be able to get your ideas across really crisply, right? So they can see. And then at the end, it's nice to have things like takeaways, call to action, all of this stuff. This is what you'll do. So when you leave, hearing someone speak, they go boom.
So what's a call to action? Like, go and, give an example, like, for the people.
So what I want you all to do today is to think about your story. Think about your parents. Think about the sacrifices they made for you. Think about where you are in your life and what it is you're wanting to do and what's really important to you, not what other people think you should do. And make a notation of that. We do things in like to-do lists, and I encourage people, don't wake up at 3 a.m. and go, oh my God, I got to do this tomorrow. Write down a series of different things that you've got to do that go on through the course of the day. But even interestingly, write down what you're grateful for. What do you have gratitude for? And if you really appreciate why you're even doing any of this to begin with, your purpose, you're going to feel much more significant. But you know what? It's also good to write down, what did you fail at? What mistakes did I make? I teach poker. We play that. I play that quite a bit. And I'm not interested in the gambling dynamic. I'm fascinated with the element of mitigating, lessening error and mistake. In anything we do. How can we get rid of the mistakes that we make? We know younger people are faced cognitively, right, with a stress. They're not mature men until 28 and women or men 26 or women 28, right? So for the most part, they're going to make some bad decisions and poor judgment when they're younger. And so the idea, if they can be more clear so they can avoid those major mistakes so they don't have catastrophes. Catastrophes are big ones. Drinking and driving and killing someone is a catastrophe.
Absolutely.
Then that is totally avoidable. And we can't blame that, well, I was just young and stupid, right? Or having a family before we're ready to have a family. So, whatever circumstances are that they want to be able to control.
So what's the worst thing that happened to a new speaker or someone that's pitching and stuff like that?
So I've seen people backstage before we're going on, they're throwing up in a bucket. I mean, they are stressing. I'm like, it's okay, good buddy. You're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. Just think about why you're here, right? And so the excitement about it. When I go speak at large audiences and groups, it's really, really fun. I get excited about it. People want you to do well. I know I'm going to get a lot of business from it, a lot of clients.
That's what I try to tell people. It's like, they're rooting for you.
They are rooting for you.
It's like I'm up there. I'm like Rudy. You know what I mean?
I love the football player. That was great.
Right?
I love that movie.
Yeah. Even my dad, when he watched Rudy, he was like, "You're Rudy." Because no matter what happens, you just keep on going. It's like, well, I'm Rudy.
And here's the thing. If you're good at what you do in life, people are going to ask you to speak to a large group. And so that opportunity is going to come. And are you going to pass on it and say, no, I don't want to do that? And then you miss a real significant... Because I don't believe... People say luck is a big part of success in life. People are in the right place at the right time, but you put yourself in circumstances.
Luck favors
if you're out networking and you go out to events and you're meeting people, or you're very active on social media on different elements to build your business, it's not lucky when people start calling you, right? But people don't. There's such an aversion of judgment.
When I was about 16, I couldn't talk to people. I mean, I was really bad. And then the Source magazine came out as a hip hop publication,
right.
And I was actually working with them, and they sent me a bunch of stuff to hand out. So I would go to clubs and like events, and I'd hand it out. And most people didn't even know what Source was, and there was like it was an East Coast thing. It was it was not really well known here. But then it started getting known, so I just kept on handing it out. And then people will ask me about the artists that are in the magazine or on the product. That's how I learned how to actually speak to people.
Well, 16 is a tough age because at 16 you become self-aware. So I have programs where I have kids as young as 11, and they're hams. They get up there, and even middle school, they love speaking.
So say you have a kid.
Yeah.
How do you get them prepared for speaking and all these things?
And I work with a lot of kids.
I mean, do you just throw them out there and say, dude, you're speaking today?
No. You go through all these
dynamics. You're going to go sing in front of grandma today. Like
you go through all the elements of what makes good speaking, right? Telling stories, telling jokes, that's how it starts.
Isn't that what speaking is? It's really storytelling.
Absolutely. No, it is.
So as long as they could tell their story.
So we have this crazy thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And what that is that when we're...
Kruger?
Dunning-Kruger. It's not from the movie.
Okay.
And the idea is when you're about 16, 17, you kind of go through this experience where you kind of know everything and you don't know shit.
Really?
Well, what happens is it's kind of like that tape measure. You ever pulled the tape measure out and you let it snap back and smacks you in the face?
Yeah.
So you start at this really high 100% confidence level, and then it starts tapering down, and then you go through that proverbial 10 years, 10,000 hours of experience to become an expert at something, and then it comes back up, and it never achieves that area. That's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So we have to be aware that this is going to take practice. This is not a quick pill to become a great speaker or a better communicator, and that's what we're looking for. We're aspiring to be better communicator, get ideas across so that people get inspired.
Do people come to you like when they have communication issues with their family or like friends,
absolutely,
loved ones?
Absolutely.
So this is not just for like speaking to audiences.
No.
This is for
everything. When I talk about giving a toast, or I have a lot of people who hire me and say, Josh, I've got to give 4 weddings. I have 4 daughters. And one gentleman came up to me and he says, I know I'm going to give all these toasts in the next 2-3 years because they're all boyfriends and they're all getting married. And he was stressed about that because he knew. I mean, he's a pillar in his community, and he said, I'm going to have to give these speeches, and I don't want them to.
Did you tell him the advice I give first?
which was
don't get hammered and do the speech.
Well, it's probably not a good idea. Or drink, or eat a lot of dairy,
or you're going to tell the truth.
Or a lot of carbonated sodas and things like that just before you go speak. But to think about what it is, recently my nephew got married last year, and it was really sweet, and it was kind of awkward because at the rehearsal dinner, people asked, I was going to speak, and I didn't want to give a speech. I wanted to talk from the heart. This is my nephew getting married, and I'm so proud of him.
That's awesome.
And it was very significant. So it's a different kind of speech. We're humans too, and oftentimes people have an expectation level. Yeah. So there's a lot of CEOs I work with, and what happens is their assistants hire me because they say my boss sucks. He or she, they don't know the material very well. They assume because they're wealthy or this, that, and the other, they're just going to kill it every time, and they've done it so many times poorly, and they don't realize it. And the reality is there are circumstances like that where people in the audience are not rooting for you. They're all like, now, why is that guy so successful? What was it he does? Why is he the CEO? Right? Because the CEO is, the leader of a company is a steward. They're showing where we're going. They're showing vision. But they got to sell that, right, to the whole audience, so their crew, their employees, that they're willing to fight for them and work hard.
No, that's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of very interesting speakers out there, and there's a lot of them that really are not that great. But to me, it's almost like, my favorite actor was like Robin Williams. And I love watching him because he's Robin Williams playing a role. And he's not acting. He's Robin Williams playing a role. Rest in peace, Robin Williams, So, but it was comfortable. So what I try to do is just be myself, and I play the role and talk about whatever it is that I'm there to talk about.
So to help a lot of people, for them immediately is to identify, think at home, you could do this, think of a speaker you admire. Someone in your life or a professional or whomever, and you go, I really admire that speaker, and then think of what are the characteristics or why are they effective? Find that first, right? Why is their stories work? And then what are the attributes?
Gary Vee, because he's really intelligent. He don't give a fuck, right? I mean, that's,
Right, but listen, he's even changing his thing now. He's throwing the F word around a lot lately, and then he realized, wow, a lot of people want to show his videos and stuff to kids, and he can't. And so he's now making little V. He's doing all this stuff about kids and getting them involved in entrepreneurism, and there's a good message there. And it's not that we can't or shouldn't use the F word and all that stuff, but there's times and circumstances that's not the way to relate necessarily. If you are a comedian, for instance, and you want to be on national television, they call that blue material. You're not going to get a slot on Jimmy Fallon. You can't. So you're going to have to, if your material is all really crude,
you're going to have to improvise.
You're not going to, it won't translate because the whole material is so crude.
It'll just be beep, beep,
Listen,
beep.
I tell speakers, you can't do anything to offend anybody. If you offend one person in a group,
oh my God,
you're screwed.
I'm screwed then. I offend everybody.
Well, you have to know what it is that offends. People say, I don't care, and then they say, well, okay, you don't necessarily work for them, but you do, depending on what it is they want to achieve. So it makes a difference.
No, I mean, and that's one of those things for me. It's like I speak from the heart. I'm just there. And I really focus on not myself, right? Yeah. So I think extreme nervousness and stuff is caused by selfishness. We're only extremely nervous when we're being selfish. Like, what if I mess up? I'm there to actually drop some knowledge. When I first started, I really didn't prepare as well. So I was at this one event, and I talked crap about Southwest Airlines, and they were the sponsor. And I didn't even know, right? So, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, but what's crazy? I still get hired. So that tells me I'm doing something right.
You can, but those mistakes you want to probably avoid.
Yeah. But the reality of it is I didn't know any different. And that's why it's important to have somebody like yourself on this, with me, because we sit there and go, well, we're going to just try to do this or that or whatever it is. But really, it's a lot of prep. It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
If you want to be good at what you're going to do, 50,000 hour practice or more to be an expert. But think about from a financial side of it, like as a speaker, right? So I know speakers right now that are making about $5,000 a speech. Yeah. They're doing once a week. So it's like an hour a week, plus travel and all that stuff. They're making $260,000 a year.
No, sure. But they have to be careful when you're just thinking about how you monetize speaking as opposed to what are the opportunities. For instance, a lot of my clients want to be motivational speakers and such. And I really want to encourage them to be coaches as well, to be able to teach concepts. First of all, they're going to do very well if they can create programs that people will pay for and you have a sequence and then they'll go for...
Those are called add-ons. Right, so you're speaking.
Well, not an add-on. Like my program, I have an 8-week course, and it's a standalone program. People work with me longer, of course, because they're always going to be speaking and want feedback and things. But the reality is, I want to put it all in one solid 2-month, 8-week program, once a week, one-on-one. That's why I work with students all over the world, one-on-one or group classes or whatever the format. I want programs that are affordable, that are accessible, that people can really use. They don't have to feel like, oh, I'm a natural speaker. but they know they have great ideas. So I do a program for kids up in Palos Verdes called PVNet, which is the largest STEM tech center in the United States for middle school to high school.
That's awesome.
So the kids learn droning and 3D modeling and VR and all this fun stuff, gene mapping. But they come home and grandma or grandpa and all these folks say, well, what does it do? How does it work? And they can't articulate it. And if you can't present it in a way where you can simplify, then how are you going to ever, forget the initial stages of age, how are you ever going to get to seed funding?
Simplify, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I think that's helped me is I'm so simple. I go to a lot of keynote speeches and stuff with all these big CEOs and prominent speakers. Yeah. I really don't understand half the shit they're talking about. I'm sitting there like, what the hell did he just say? So I don't know if they're just trying to dazzle people with words or they're really there to actually drop knowledge.
Right.
So I'm a little confused sometimes, and so to me, I just encourage people to just keep it simple. You're talking to your friend, you're talking to your neighbor, you're talking to your dog maybe.
Who want to hear what you have to say. So I tell people, look at it kind of like we look at balance sheets like a P&L or something like that. Let's create instead of a P&L, we call it P&G. What your pain points are and what your glee points are. So identify, you can do this at home too, you notate 3 areas that I have difficulty with that are my pain points. Not areas you think you do poorly or that you don't do well, that people may have told you and given you feedback in your life.
So that would be like speaking or whatever, talking.
Modulate your voice or this, or whatever, any little element that you do this thing with your hand frequently, you're not aware of it.
Or the ums or this or that, right?
Okay, so you identify those. Then you identify these 3 glee points. Those are areas you're happy and you're proud about, that you do really well, and not just that you think, this goes back, not what you think you do well, but somebody said
what they think you do well.
What you do well. Yeah. And this is going to require you to go out and ask people. If you're going to speak at an event, ask a friend, a confidant, someone to sit out there and actually take some notes and address that with you. And when you have that, then you can really build on those skills and get rid of it. I'm not a big fan of winging it, because when we wing it, we're not sure what's going to happen.
When we wing it, we wong it. You know what I'm saying, right?
Well, many times it won't go as planned. And listen, the whole idea is a good lawyer doesn't ask a question he doesn't know the answer to. Okay? Yeah. A speaker should do that too. What is it I'm presenting? Why do they want to hear it? How will this be helpful for them in their lives? When will they be able to use it? And, all of those sequences, and that can really help. So for a young person who's stressing out, who doesn't have all the experience or all the fancy degrees or this, that, and the other, the reality is, look, I went to USC, and it's a big stress these days. It's very controversial. People are faking college applications. They're faking job applications. What you can't fake is an interview. And, there are circumstances when people can look to another human being and talk to them and see what their story, what they're about, and they can be honest and direct, that oftentimes that's the kind of person someone wants to hire. And so they just got to put themselves in circumstances and opportunities where they can get that benefit too.
So what would be some advice if somebody's going through an interview process right now? Like, is there, what can you give them? Is there like 1, 2, 3?
Absolutely. Look at how many wonderful opportunities we have with research now. There is not a company on this planet you cannot look up and know exactly what's going on. You can connect with different people within the HR structure, within the, even in C-suite, whatever, on LinkedIn, see who's what, where they went to school, what they were about, where they from. Find out on Glassdoor, people will even talk about their experiences, know what's going on and happening with that, and then identify who are the top companies I want to work for. Don't focus on just your LinkedIn jobs and all these other things where you're going to find work on Monster. That's not where the real job opportunities are. You need to look within your own structure, people you know, your friends from Facebook, the kids, people you went to school with. Are you connected with them on LinkedIn? Right? Are you actually using it? Instagram, it can be useful when people write a note or something to you, DM them, or right, if someone makes a comment, connect with what goes on. I've been able to get clients not only from all that, but also make some amazing friendships and help a lot of my clients in regards to getting jobs and things, because we can be able to identify that. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. And so we have accessibility to that stuff. So I tell them to prepare some questions, right? A good question would be asked is, what are 3 things you would like me to accomplish in my first 3 months? Even come prepared with an action plan, right? This is what I intend to do, Mr. Jones, and here's my first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. This is from what I gathered from what what was write up about your job. These are ideas that I have. If this sounds wonderful, I really look forward to working with you.
And talk about past experiences and stuff like that.
Past experiences, and identify. They're going to ask you questions like your weaknesses and your strengths. Your weaknesses is not to say I work too hard and things like that. You have to really be able.
That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
Damn. Jeez.
No, but identify. Let's say, I'm not very good. I wasn't very good at Excel. And I worked for this company, and I said, you know what, I realized how important it was to work it, and I became the champion in our office. Yeah. And I worked on the weekends, and I learned on it, and I became so good at it, and I really knew my formulas. I felt so comfortable with it, and that became my standout. So what became a weakness became a strength, and that's something you can share.
The Rocky story, yeah.
Or whatever circumstance. It could be anything. But if we dig deep, we've all failed. We've all had problems and difficulties.
Absolutely.
And if we can go back and actually see what transpired and what happened and what did I learn from it, and that's the story that you can tell a hiring person, that's impressive.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I think it would be awesome for you to give this information out, is
sure.
Why should people get a coach, right? I get this question all the time, right? And why should they pay to have a coach, right? So that's one of those things. It's like, I should have a mentor, and I should do this.
Well, some people are doing it because everybody else does it.
Yes.
And I recognize that people are hiring trainers with exercise, whatever. Sometimes they need the push, the motivation, accountability. But sometimes they don't know the processes. You can go on Google all kinds of things. How to do this, how to do that.
Yeah.
But unless you've heard someone who can break it down and say, this is why we do this. When we talk about gestures, why or how we use our hands, and whether we're going to compartmentalize something, or we want to envelop an idea, or we want to emotionalize something, to actually give it context about how a gesture actually means something is very significant. You're not going to get that from a Google search, right? So those ideas, a coach can help one person, especially when it's one-on-one and live, to say, okay, what is it you're trying to do? What is it you want to achieve? You want to do more seminars? You want to do more programs? Right? That's effective. Years ago, for a company, I would go speak in Vegas for SHRM for 3,000 people on how language and cultural training has changed in the 21st century. And boom, Myles, 800 people came up and asked me for my business card. That's effective lead gen. That's awesome. Solid prospecting. But when I ask sales teams, and I build and train sales teams for all kinds of companies, and I'll look at, I have the resumes of the sales guys, and I'll say, Jeremy, it says you're a people person. Have you done any public speaking? Do you present? Do you go speak at chambers of commerce? Do you go speak at Rotary clubs? Do you speak at any kind of networking events? Oh, no, I hate public speaking. Well then, brother, you're not a people person. You're a person. Right? And as salespeople, they're the vanguard of the company. They got to go out there and they should present. And I'm amazed how many don't utilize that as an opportunity.
Because of their fear.
Because of whatever their fears are. And they're just not founded. And if they're a fear that they don't know what they're doing, then build the skill set.
Well, I think part of it, too, is a lot of people think public speaking is TED. And TED, I mean, you talk about TED and kind of the contrast between like maybe just
TED Talks speaking, are people's... Right.
TED Talks. The formula is different. I mean,
TED Talks are people's understanding of oration, orators, the speakers from the past. That's how many people were entertained. Right?
I mean, it's solid. I mean, it's like they're training, they're going, they're presenting,
right.
I mean, it's
they
like
all have exciting ideas. If you look at them, and I tell them, one of my sessions, they actually have to do. Not a TED Talk, but they give a 7 to 10 minute speech, a PowerPoint, because I teach PowerPoint or how to use that effectively to organize and construct your speech, is to tell me about that TED Talk you saw. And you create your own slides, right? No more than 7 slides. And we're going to actually share those ideas. Now, TED Talk folks are interesting. You have Olympians, you have athletes, you have all kinds of fascinating people who've gone through just maybe trauma and health issues. And sometimes they've never had any experience in public speaking, and they're not as effective as they'd like to be. Then there's other people who are great speakers who can tell other people's stories. The fact of the matter is, I work with a lot of folks who want just feedback on a speech they have to go give next week. Instead of, let's not just put Band-Aids on it, let's go through the fundamentals and learn it as a skill like anything else. So that's what coaching is. Coaching is like you need to learn this whole process of how to be an effective speaker and what that does. When I work with people for interviewing, for instance, because to me, public speaking is not like just Tony Robbins going and speak in public. Doing motivational speaking. It means speaking in public. One person, 3, 5, 1,000, it doesn't make a difference. But the idea that they should have that and develop that confidence that they can go and speak on any subject that they're required to or responsible for. And most people don't. They don't take that time. And it does take time to build on that skill. So they kind of cultivate. For me, in the coaching, we work on each element. It builds on the next one and the next one and the next one. And by the end, they've really created a skill.
So would you say the first one is preparation? Like just really knowing?
First we have to get over the anxieties and the stresses and understand what public speaking is. So a lot of people are not clear. So let's take a lawyer. A lawyer goes to speak, and my father was a courtroom lawyer, and I got a kick out of that watching him as a kid. When they speak in the courtroom, who do they speak to?
The judge.
Okay, so the judge is watching.
Or the jury.
Well, let's start with the judge. The judge is like, don't fool around in my courtroom. No messing around here.
Yeah.
Okay, straightforward, just stay to it. Then the jury, it's interesting you say that, because the jury is sitting there, they don't have any buy-in here. They're just like, entertain me, right? I watch CSI, I watch Law and Order, make me laugh, right? But then, get this, then there's the other lawyer, the opposing counsel, and he is there chomping on the bit, right? He's waiting to object, or he's trying to find the mistake in what you're saying. So now this guy, let's say on this side, this lawyer has to think about these three people so far. But then he's got his client who's ready to hug him or fire him, and he's got to make him happy or her happy. And then the most important one for a lawyer, for his livelihood, is the audience, the gallery. Because that person's going to come up and tap him on the break and say, on their recess and say, "Sir, do you have a business card?" Or, "Ma'am, do you have a card?"
I need you.
That's how they get their business, right? Look how many lawyers become pundits on TV, right? That's the next level. I work with a lot of folks in real estate, mortgage. Most of them now, many of them now are doing coaching or training. They're stepping away from real estate. Yeah. Because there's so many people who need that information to understand. I train a lot of realtors, particularly with English as a second language, right? The three elements of sales training, business English, and public speaking and presentation skills. And they've never synergized those things together. They've never put them all together.
Wow.
And so it's a unique opportunity. And there's a lot of people who really need to build their skills of communication, whether they're native speakers or not. Listen, I had troubles hiring trainers because my sales guys that I knew stopped paying attention to English after 5th grade grammar, right? And they couldn't teach it.
That's me, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then my folks who were public speakers weren't as clear about the English element or maybe even sales training. And English teachers don't have any business acumen or sales experience. And so there's a process in everything. There's a process in sales, right? We develop with rapport. We establish that. We identify what the objections and the resistance are. We can do that with speaking. What are the areas that people are going to have issue with what I'm talking about? Are they going to challenge me? That's the other thing. In an interview or in public speaking, there's always that proverbial Q&A. Right? Is there any questions? So instead of a Q&A asking questions, say, is there questions, comments, or thoughts? And then when you ask that question, wait a little millisecond, because there's an awkward moment where maybe nobody has any questions because everybody has a fear of public speaking. And you jump in and you say, it's funny, somebody asked me the other day, "Josh, what should I do in such and such?" So you can have 3, 4, 5 of those prepared, and that can open up more discussion. And that's something people don't do.
Why do you think they don't do that? Because they don't want to have anybody ask questions?
Well, they're not anticipating. And like I mentioned, a lawyer doesn't ask a question he doesn't know the answer to. Why can't we do that? Okay, I teach acting too, and I have acting classes, and we talk about this all. Every action has a reaction, right? So whatever you're going to say, someone's going to confront. And same with arguments. Look at the arguments and things that we have. Poker's like that too. You make this move, I'm going to make this move. But why did you make that move? That doesn't make sense because you made a move before that doesn't add up. That's how we win in poker. That's the consistency, because we can see that someone doesn't know what they were doing. And the game of poker, just like in other things in life, you can learn real quick. It takes 5 minutes to learn, a lifetime to master. And what happens is, what's interesting, is people win a lot in the very beginning because they do something they're not sure why they did it. They winged it. And the other guy who's more sophisticated, knows the game, just sitting there going, okay, I fold, right? And so they win, and they win a lot. And then they think, I'm great at this. Or public speaking, right? Someone gets very excited. The product sold itself. And then the next time it didn't work quite that well. And that's where they get complacent.
That's why I tell people, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome.
Yeah.
You got to change the process.
So that's why you're constantly reevaluating. And I videotape all of my own speeches as well when I'm speaking at events and such, and I go back and identify. I noticed at one point when I was speaking like my arc was too high. I'm a little guy, so I wasn't sure if it was what was going on.
I'm a little guy too.
But then I realized that that's not a comfortable place to be speaking. And so, but that's the kind of thing I couldn't get feedback on. And I've had coaches and things over the years, and I did a lot of competitive speaking, the World Championship of Public Speaking, Toastmasters sponsors. And
I didn't even know that was even in existence.
It's a thing, my friend.
The World Championship of Public Speaking.
You should get involved with that. Toastmasters sponsors it, and so I came in third in 2006
I'm going to come in there
in the regionals in Hawaii, and this was very exciting.
Like Macho Man Randy Savage,
Well, those are motivational, but they have contests. Joking. They have a whole series of contests. They have.
They still have that?
Yeah, motivational.
I'm going to sign up for that. Let's do this.
You join. Toastmasters is an organization that's been around for many years, since the early 20s, and it's interesting. People who join are kind of nerds, and not the people who really need it. Yeah. People join to get over their fears, sometimes of public speaking, or they're trainers who are trying to hone their skills and such. But they have contests which are fantastic. on fantastical storytelling, what they call tall tales, or humorous, not stand-up comedy, but just a humorous story speeches. And then extemporaneous, where you're speaking with no notes. They give you a subject, and each of the 5 contestants have to speak on that. And you go and you start at the club level, the area, the division, the district, and then the regionals, and then the finals, the World Championship.
That's cool.
And so I got to the regionals in 2006. That was 25,000 people.
Oh, congratulations.
It was exciting. And I get more mileage out of that coming in 3rd place than some of my friends who won the whole thing straight up. But you have to identify. To me, what really became interesting is there were so many people who needed public speaking skill set training and sales training, right, and business English, and find a way that we can really address all of those effectively so that they can start their own businesses.
That's cool.
You know?
Yeah, and that's one of a lot of people, why do I need to speak? Well, it's a cornerstone of being an entrepreneur, selling, making a lot of money.
You have to.
It's a differentiator between being, in my opinion, very successful and successful.
You have to speak. And Warren Buffett talks about that all the time. They asked him, well, what do you think is the most important elements of success in business? Sales and public speaking. In fact, on his wall, instead of Columbia and all the degrees he has his certificate from Dale Carnegie from his his certificate on public speaking.
That's
and
awesome.
It's that important, and it really is. It's really essential. And any given point in your life, you're going to have to speak in any kind of realm. If you're a doctor, and I know this, I worked with City Hope with 300 doctors, preparing them called Beyond the PowerPoint, because many of them have challenges speaking without their darn notes. Right? They use that as a crutch.
Yeah.
They're speaking. They're sharing.
Well, because they're memorizing, they're not speaking.
Well, yeah, and they're there to share their findings on their research. But guess what? They're also there to get funding for the research. So they got 2 different hats they got to put on. Or they may have folks like me who are cancer patients who want to hear more about our ailment. Or maybe there's cancer patients, our families who want to help us as caretakers, and they are trying to hear. So
but most of the time, experts could just talk about that all day without, slides and all, like a lot of it. I'm not saying no slides at all, but that's where that memorizing and all that stuff is. I think it kills some of the speeches.
Well, it does, because people rely on PowerPoints as a crutch, but it can be a great tool. I mean, when I have events where I'm speaking and people come up and ask me for my card so they can send me...
To keep it driven.
I can send them the deck. Yeah, and we stay along a process of what we're saying, but we're not writing sentences up there. We're not having a whole list of things, because if you have a whole bunch of stuff on your PowerPoint, people are going to start reading that. They're not going to be listening to what you have to say.
So it's just
you want to animate each one. And I go through all of this in my classes about how we can be effective with PowerPoints, whether it's at work for 3 or 4 slides. I had a presentation. I was the last speaker of the day, and they wanted me to lighten it up and stuff, and I just had 1 slide. And the 1 slide was my logo for my company.
That's what I usually do, because I don't want to sit there and go, dude, did I press it?
Right, everybody else is going through industry reports and just going, and our next slide.
Yeah, I did that. I just spoke just recently, and I was just like, they wanted me to do a bunch of slides, and I'm like, and I have bad vision. So that was one of the days when I couldn't put my contact in my left eye, so I was blind in my left eye. Right. And guess where the TV was? On the left side. So I'm over there going, I'm sure I looked stupid. And then after I was just like,
well, that's why we shouldn't be relying on that. And whether it's in note cards or any of those things, I mean, any of that can fail. The PowerPoint may not work. I've been in systems. I recently spoke at a huge event, and there were 2 big monitors, and one of them didn't work, and the only one worked on there, and then the clicker wasn't happening, and I had to deal with the IT guy on stage in front of everybody about how to manage that.
So how do you manage that? When shit hits the fan, what do? You just push through?
You know your material and your process. I suggest people to actually print out those PowerPoints, those slides, so they know what their order is. Or like a comedian or even a musician has a set list, right? So I have, on my podium, I'll have 4 bullet points.
Set list.
Of what I'm going to talk about.
That's a great one.
Not sentences, just words that are going to prompt the idea of what I have. And then I create something called the bow tie. And what it is you start, let's say, in the center, and you speak on, you break it up into 4 parts. Or 5 parts. Bow tie, you're one in the center, and then you have the bow. Mm-hmm. So what it is, you start with P1, and that's the first part of your speech. You're going to start in the beginning, in the middle, in the stage. Then you're going to walk over to the right side, and you're talking to someone over there, so that gravitates, that pulls you over there, and then you turn and you're talking to everybody here. That's P2. Then I come over here to the back part, and stage left, and I refer to over there, and I'm talking P3. This is how I'm going to remember all my material. I can go a couple steps up, and then all the way back, and then... And
so page 1, page 2,
not necessarily
page
pages,
3.
parts. Like, I'm talking about 4 things in my speech today, and I'm going to talk about this part here, then I'm going to go over there, and I'm not just going to meander around. This is a big challenge. People just wandering on stage. We're in a tennis match going, okay, he's going over there, now they're there, now
he's there, yeah.
Right, so you want to make sure that when you're moving with your movement, you're using... you have reason. Yeah. Like, why am I going over there? Well, I'm going over to talk to these people over here, and then I'm going to turn and look to the rest of the group.
Somebody asked me today, they want to do a live, and they're like, how do you prepare this and that? What notes and things like that? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting that Josh said that, because there's my abbreviation notes. So
but you haven't looked at them that much.
Well, I've been looking at them the whole time. I just try not to. Yeah. So
right.
It's like,
That's the thing. If you have it on a podium, right, I can meander by, and as I'm walking by, just in my gaze, I see it. I know what I'm going to talk about next.
Yes.
The musicians have that set list taped on the floor.
Yeah, they know what songs coming up next.
Comedians have that on their stool with their water bottle.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And so it's not, and again, they're not looking at, oh, here's that whole joke and I'm going to read it out. They're just, okay, that's
a reminder. Yeah.
That's why the practice is so key, that you go through all the elements of what you're going to speak about.
Yeah. So like me, I put practice, prepare, the dog, the mom, the best friend, focus.
Why can't you write practice times 3?
Well, part of it was because, I just kind of wrote that down right before you walked in. So it's just like, here's some notes just to remind me, right? So then I know, okay, these are the elements that I think are important. Right. And then you started hitting them, everything else.
You do this very well in your interviewing, and I've seen some of the stuff you do is in regards to being so curious. You're a curious person. You want to know, well, how does that work?
You know why? Because curiosity kills anxiety, right?
It does.
So I'm super curious. If there's something that's bothering me, I want to know everything about it.
And so that's my approach to public speaking. It shouldn't be this, oh, wow, this is something only certain people can do. It's something we can all do, and it's something we have to do. If we want to get promoted in our job, it's essential. I work with a lot of engineers. These guys are making $200,000-$300,000 a year, and they're not getting promoted to managerial posts because their speaking skills and presentation skills are not on level. And some of it, sometimes is business English, right? So they have to enhance and build on those skills as well. And their written English, their email correspondence. I cover all of those elements, which are really key. And even native speakers, we misspeak all the time. And we're using words incorrectly, or we're
I do that all the time.
And that's okay. I'm not talking about being perfectly grammatically correct all the time.
That doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter.
No, it matters if you're trying to get your ideas across.
What if I make up words? I've done that in the past.
People do that all the time.
As long as it sounds cool, right? It's like, I think that's a word. I think that exists.
We have malapropisms like, I will dissolve the mystery. I would resolve the mystery, right? Or things like that, where people are constantly getting things confused about what word. Oftentimes, when you see a photograph in a frame, people call it a picture instead of a picture.
Yeah, so it's like a pitcher of water.
A pitcher of water, or a baseball pitcher. So when they were a kid, they said a word a certain way, and they didn't realize it. One of my clients
roof,
says...
I call it the roof instead of the roof.
Right, so one of my clients says a mispronunciation. Well, we pronounce a word, but the pronunciation, it's Nunciation.
Yeah.
So it's pronunciation, we do pronounce a word. Yeah. So here's an example of a perfect ironic example of that people make mistakes.
But really, nobody's listening at that level, right?
No, people are paying attention if you're using a word that doesn't make sense.
Oh, man.
And there are certain things that are cultural things, that are different, and that's not it. But it's part of just the sloppiness. If they're sloppy in this way, and the way they're getting their ideas across, imagine when you're pitching and you're presenting your product, right? The difference between things like Shark Tank, where it's television, right? It's about getting on TV, and it's being dynamic, and it's having that energy and all those things, as opposed to real VC rounds. They want to know the financials. They want to understand, how is this great product or service or idea going to be to fruition? How can it be just not an idea, but how can we make this work? And how is this going to make money? What is the revenue build? And what is your whole process, and what do you anticipate? Because listen, the initial rounds of business, whether it's the angel investor round or just your own cap raise that you're doing on your own, the initial seed, is no one's holding you to the fire that way. But once it's getting to that next round, you've got to have revenue. You've got to show the business is working, and that's the only way people will jump in. Look, there's been a lot of crazy stories in recent years. That Theranos story, right, with Elizabeth Holmes, who created that interesting product that can prick your finger with the blood.
Yes.
And it was all BS. I mean, it was just crazy. And nobody did any due diligence, because she was mesmerizing enough to them. They're like, oh, she's the female Steve Jobs. I listened to what she had. And she had some really important people on her board. People just followed in line and didn't do due diligence.
Wow.
And so that's really key in regards to finding and identifying what's needed, right? What is it? Phil Knight from Nike said something really interesting. There are two things in successful business. Are you passionate about it? And what's the niche? Is there a niche for it? Is there real something unique about that element that fits?
Is there fanatical customers?
And now we're focusing on condensing a time. Almost every major business you look at, Airbnb, Uber, any of those things, they're all dealing with, how can you save me time? And yet people are wasting time more than ever, which is really ironic.
Time, yeah.
And the convenience things. But there's a lot of things that get misunderstood. We take Netflix, right? Blockbuster should have bought them. They had an opportunity at 60 million val, and they dropped the ball there. And it's now, what, 60 billion more valuation.
Yeah.
And so they're kicking themselves about how they dropped, and of course that business is gone.
But change is different, evolution and stuff like that, disruption. It's like it's really difficult.
But in the company gets bigger and bigger, it's harder to approach. Right. Think about the guy at Kodak who was saying, "Hey boss, you know what? This social media thing's taking off. There's this little company called Instagram. I think we should buy it. Get out of here. That's ridiculous. It'll never take off."
We've been doing this for 100 years.
Right. Yeah. And so Facebook, picked up real quick on which ones are going. Do they want to be the next MySpace, or are they actually going to have something that's sustainable? Yeah. And they have to change as time goes on.
And the cell phone did that with the evolution of the cell phone. I mean, it eradicated
everything cameras, is moving forward, and it's
computers.
So we constantly have to be on that mark right now. I work with a lot of older folks right now who are really struggling. A realtor came up to me and said, "Joshua, I've been doing this 45 years. I'm struggling. Can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I don't know what's happening, man. I'm not getting clients. I'm really having a difficulty." I said, "Are you on social media?" He said, "Nah, that's stupid."
No, because he has to put his baby picture on there.
I said it's dumb, but it's not stupid, and you have to use that, figure out how it's working to be able to promote your products and your houses.
Are you the guy that coaches these real estate agents and tell them to put their high school pictures on their cards? Right? Is that one of your things that you tell
I don't know
them?
if they're putting high school pictures, but they're focusing too much on image and their own branding, and they do that on Instagram too. There are a lot of women who are out there. I don't even know what they're selling.
I just spoke at this event and they put a picture of me since 2008. So they joke, I went up there and I said, "This is my real estate picture." It's trying to make me, and I was skinnier there too.
Well, pictures matter, right?
And I was bald. I had a shaved head and I was skinny. Then
my mother wants to know
why this fat guy with hair, and they're like, "Who the hell's this?"
The flyer you put out for this event, for our YouTube thing. My mother wants to know why you picked a picture of me frowning.
That's the picture you sent me.
No, that wasn't the picture.
Hey, Thumb and Dodd?
I think you found it on my social media.
You know why? Because I wanted to look happier than you. Right? It's like, I want to intimidate you, so when you come into the hot seat, you're like, "Dude, I'm ready."
Right.
I used to fly to Detroit all the time on Northwest Airlines, and that's where the hub is.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when I was going to go meet with the OEMs, I would sit in the plane, and I would be like in maybe first class or the front rows. Mm-hmm. I couldn't touch the ground. So I'm flying with my legs dangling the whole flight, and it just made me feel like such a, like a small person. So I'm like, they booked the flight on purpose. They get me the same plane where I can't touch the ground. So when I walk in there, they just start pounding on me, right? Because I'm all vulnerable. Because I feel like I'm a kid in like a, like in a chair where you're getting.
Well, I tell you, when I play poker,
they
have those chairs. You can move them up. I always make sure because I'm not a big guy, I move them up to the top, and I'm at the same level. This guy who's 6'2" next to me. I'm like, "What's up, brother?" And I mess around with him at the table and I say, "Je peux français? Un petit peu? Je ne sais pas qu'est-ce que c'est, non peut pas se fenêtre, non? Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Jetzt wecke durch bitte Kinder, nein? Bisschen? Russian? Ruski, beschkis kaskuto, gurgis pitatisco, no dus.
How many languages do you speak?
Italiano, non torre plese che se no cotogetara, plain chichi che sence, dus plese, similar español, habla español? Un poquito?
Yeah.
¿Por qué? Ay, Calino, yo quiero chupcasi en torre plese, se no cotora capara, se, ay, Calino, Dios mío, mentoroso.
How many languages do you speak?
I'm illiterate in 14 languages.
Jesus.
Do you know what that means? It means I don't speak it, brother.
Illiterate.
I was an actor for years. I used to do a lot of voiceover work, and then one time this director came out of a looping session. He said, "Where's my Russian?" And I'm just standing there with a Diet Coke, and I went, "Padushka, Vatrusko, Nosko, Noskovia." He said, "Get in here, you're late." I said, "Screw you, I don't work for you." He said, "What else can you do?" I did all these different languages. I do Australian, mate. You gotta like that. I spent time channeling it in the air. Or Irish. Now that one's fun. You gotta like that. That was great. I spent time in Belfast. Or Scotland. It's further got to the back in the throat, and it's great nonetheless. And so all those things become really kind of funny. I go to my agent. I said, "Put this on my resume. Language assimilation." She said, "What's that?" I said, "I just can bullshit all these languages, vocabulary, intonation, cadence." She said, "That's ridiculous." I said, "Oh, okay. Should I give you the check now or should I not? This is ridiculous, right?"
Oh my God, man. Well, Josh, thank you, bro. Thank you for being on the show, and
you're welcome.
It's always amazing. Amazing coach. How do people find you? So
you can find me. I'm on everything. On Twitter at Joshua _Schulman. I'm on Instagram, Joshua Schulman. I'm on LinkedIn, Joshua Schulman, or SCI, Schulman Communications Interactive.
And that's your company, right?
My website is www.getcoachingfromsci.com. And so there's a million places. I'm on WeChat, which is Chinese social media. I'm on Keiko Talk, which is Korean social media.
Yeah.
WhatsApp, you name it.
Yeah, I'm on all those, and you have to be on those just to communicate with all these countries.
You do, but you know what? This is a challenge for a lot of people because they're focusing so much on creating content, all those things, that they get lost in what it is they're trying to do. So sometimes people get caught up in the branding element. Like I haven't done a lot of YouTube videos and things like that because I'm creating a lot of content for programs that people are actually doing, for companies and courses and such.
Well, I'm honored to have you on the show. Live number 5, and Haitham Madad, thank you for the great production, and we'll see you at the next live show. Thank you for joining.